There is something Oda does in One Piece, all the time. He gives you the sign first, and only later does he show you what the sign actually meant. At first it looks simple. A name, a title, a hat, a single letter. But then the story keeps going, and suddenly you realize those things were never random. They were carrying meaning, the whole time. You just couldn't see it yet. And I think that's why the biggest mystery in One Piece was never only the treasure. It was always something bigger. What is it that really stays behind after a life is over? Roger is probably the best place to start, because most people think Roger changed the world when he reached the end. Laugh Tale, the final island, the answer. But I don't think that was the moment that actually changed anything. I think the moment that changed the world was when he died. And that should already feel strange. Because if Roger had really found some final answer, then his death should have ended the story. Right? He found it, so that should be it. That's not what happens. His death does the opposite. It starts everything. That means Roger didn't leave the world with an answer. He left the world with a question. What is the One Piece? And suddenly the whole world starts moving. Not because they understand what it is, but because now they need to find out for themselves. And honestly, I think that's one of the most important things in the whole story. You don't need the full answer to begin. Sometimes all you need is a direction. And that's why ideas matter so much in One Piece. Because everything starts there. Not with proof, not with certainty, with an idea. A dream, a promise, sometimes even a lie. That's why Usopp matters so much. Because Oda keeps showing us the same thing again and again. A lie doesn't stay just a lie forever. If someone keeps moving in that direction, at some point it starts becoming real. That's how a lot of things are born in this world. Not because they were true from the beginning, but because someone kept walking long enough to give them the shape. That's what Roger really gave the world. Not a destination, a direction. And once you look at it like that, the logbook suddenly becomes way more important than it first seems. Because a logbook doesn't record treasure, it records a life. Where you went, what happened there, who you met, what changed you. That's why the contrast between Don Krieg and Luffy matters so much. Krieg wants Zeph's logbook. Why? Because he wants the route, the shortcut, the answer without the experience. He wants to skip the life part, which Luffy rejects. And that tells you everything. Because if the story is already written, then it's not yours anymore. And I think that's one of the cleanest ideas in all of One Piece. A life can't be copied. It has to be lived. And once that becomes clear, the question changes too. It stops being what is the treasure, and it becomes what exactly is being passed on. Because something is always being passed on in One Piece. Not just names, not just titles. Something deeper than that. A promise, a trust, a life, waiting to continue. And that's where the straw hat starts to matter. Because the hat is never passed on like a crown. It's not power, it's not status. It's trust. Roger to Shanks, Shanks to Luffy. And then Luffy puts it on Nami's head. And that moment matters. Because he's not protecting the head. He's protecting what the hat carries. Belief, trust. The feeling that someone can still stand up, that someone can still keep going. And maybe that's why the hat keeps changing as it moves through the story. Because life keeps touching it, history keeps touching it. Even Buggy stabbing the hat matters. Because if the hat is a promise, then the wound on it becomes part of that promise too. Even trust doesn't stay untouched. Life writes itself onto everything it passes through. So the hat stops being just a symbol. It becomes a carrier of trust, of history, of a life that still has to be lived. And once someone accepts that trust, they never move alone again. Because the captain never writes a life alone. A life is written by everyone you meet. Every island leaves a mark. Every battle changes something. Every person adds a page. And slowly, page by page, a journey becomes alive. Everything you feel, everything you say, everywhere you go, everyone you protect, everyone you heal, everything you know, everything you create, everything you remember, everything you stand for, everything you are. And that's what a crew really is. Not just companions, not just followers, but the pieces that make a life whole. And if a life is written by so many people, then who decides what that life is called? Eventually, the word does. It gives that life a name, a title. Pirate Hunter, Blackleg, Demon Child, Soul King, God Usopp. The word names what it sees. But a title is never the whole person. It catches one visible part, one role, one reputation, one moment the world was able to understand. Sometimes the title is close to the truth. Sometimes it completely hides it. Look at Robbie. For a year, the world called her the Demon Child. That title came first. Way before anyone understood who she really was. And then, in Wano, she stops running from it. If that's what it takes, she will become a demon. That's her words. That moment matters, because the title doesn't disappear, but she changes what it means. And then look at Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world. That's what the world saw. But the man himself? He just wanted a family. That's the pattern. A title is what the world sees. But a life is always bigger than the title placed on top of it. Because a title is given by the world, but a signature? A signature is something the world cannot give you. This is something that you create by yourself. And that's where this whole thing gets really good. Because a lot of people hear the word signature and think of an ink. A name at the bottom of a page. That's not what I mean. A real signature looks very different. It can be a flag, a symbol people sail under. It can be a scar, a mark left by the battles you survived. It can be a laugh, something so specific that the world recognizes it instantly. And One Piece does this constantly. Every pirate has a different laugh, and none of them sound the same. Every crew sails under a different flag. Every scar tells a different story. And sometimes a signature isn't even visual. Sometimes it's a voice, a song, a sound that leaves a mark inside other people. And One Piece has actually been saying that for a very long time. Look at Big Sake. On the surface, it's just a pirate song. People dream, they laugh, they sing. But that's not really what the song is doing. The song keeps going even when people don't. And that's the point. A life ends, but the song doesn't. The voice doesn't, the memory doesn't, the mark doesn't. That's why being Sakai feels so strange. It sounds cheerful, but underneath it, it's saying something much bigger. Life keeps moving, even through loss, even through death, even after the people are gone. And that's exactly why Uta matters too. Because now Oda pushes the same idea even further. A voice can outlive a body. A song can outlive a person. A sound can become a signature. That's what a signature is. Not a title, not a label, not just a reputation. It's the trace a life leaves behind, something that exists only because you live. And when the journey ends, that signature is what remains. And maybe that's exactly why the letter D was never meant to be explained the way people expect. Maybe D was never just a word waiting to be decoded. Maybe it was always a blank space, a place life was meant to fill. Because a name doesn't carry its full meaning from the beginning. Life gives it meaning. Choices give its meaning. Actions gives its meaning. The road gives its meaning. The mark you leave gives its meaning. That's why the system can name people. It can label them, it can rank them, it can simplify them, but it can't fully define them. A title can describe what the world sees, but it can't contain a whole life. And maybe that's what D really is. Not a fixed definition, not a closed answer, but the point where definition fails. The point where life is still bigger than the label placed on it. Maybe D was never meant to tell you who you are. Maybe it was meant to wait until your life did. And maybe that's why the world keeps asking about the treasure. What is the One Piece? People think it's something you find, something you reach, something you own. But that was never Roger's answer. Roger didn't leave the world a treasure, he left the world a question. And every captain who sailed after him had to answer it, not with words, with a life. Page by page, island by island, battle by battle, story by story. And maybe that was the answer all along. Not that you need to know exactly who you are before you begin, but that life only gives the answer shape once you start moving. Maybe we were never just talking about a treasure. Maybe we were never just talking about the letter D. Maybe all along we were describing a life. And in the end, Oda reminds us of something simple. To be truly happy, even at the death's door, you have to sign your own story. Thank you for watching.